It's embarrassing as a physician to hear my colleagues promote carnivore diets and paleo diets and keto diets. And well, that's why I wrote the book. And, the pendulum swings back and forth. A few years ago, the plant strong ideas were in ascendancy, but now that pendulum swung back, and now the carnivore meat folks are riding high. But Mother Nature doesn't care about your politics. She cares about what you're running through your arteries every 4 hours.
As a vegan, do you ever feel like you're living in a parallel universe, aware of things that many others don't even seem to notice, let alone acknowledge? I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse podcast. We talk with vegans from around the globe who, like you, are living lives of integrity and compassion with an eye toward justice. Through their personal stories, you'll come to see that you're not an outlier. In fact, you're part of an entire posse of individuals who aren't just keeping the peace, they're creating it through their food choices and beyond. You won't be saddling up, but you're in for the ride of your life. Welcome to the Vegan Posse. Hey Posse, I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse. This week's episode is dedicated to my sweet, beautiful stepdog, Daisy, who died last week. Daisy was really the light of my life these past 6 years. She was my faithful running companion, my joyful, adventurous running companion. We had so much fun on the trails of Nashville, early in the morning, walks late at night. We did it all. Daisy was also a wonderful meditation cohort. She loved to sit in my lap and snuggle with me every morning when I meditated, and I will miss her tremendously. Daisy was a vegan dog, and she thrived on her vegan diet. She was sweet. She was beautiful. She didn't live with me all the time, but she was and always will be my girl. This week, I'm delighted to bring to you an interview with someone I've long admired, a physician who brings both head and heart into his practice, and that is Dr. Michael Klaper. I first became acquainted with Dr. Klaper through films like What the Health, and later through events like Vegan Summerfest, which I attended for a long time, later came to speak at. Dr. Klaper really embodies veganism, health on every level, spiritual, physical, mental, emotional. And I respect him tremendously and was delighted to have him on my show, our show. He's got a new book called Moving Medicine Forward, which is written specifically for physicians to empower them to empower their patients through the healing of the whole food, plant-based way of eating. It's a book that's also appropriate for lay people. And you can get this book and give it to your doctors. Spread the word however you can, because we all need to know this information. And Dr. Klaper is such a wonderful example of not just talking the talk, writing the talk, but living the talk. So please enjoy this conversation with Dr. Michael Klaper. Dr. Klaper, welcome to the Vegan Posse. Are you ready for the ride of your life?
Absolutely.
I bet you are. Yeah, you've been on a lot of rides. So tell me, I know you've got an amazing new book out called Moving Medicine Forward. But before we get into that, I like to go way back with people and just hear a little bit about how you grew up and whether you ever thought about the animals in our food system as a kid.
Oh my. Well, the animals entered my life early on. I grew up in the Chicago area in the 1950s and 60s, and every summer in those years, the great polio epidemic would roll through the cities. And to spare us that fate, my mother had an uncle with a dairy farm up in northern Wisconsin. So when summer would roll around, or as soon as school would end, the next day we were on a train up to northern Wisconsin I spent my first 16 summers on my uncle's dairy farm, milking cows and driving tractors and slinging hay bales and doing what you do on a farm. And I became very aware of the animals. There were animals everywhere, including the wild animal. There were foxes and hawks and salamanders, and the natural world was everywhere, as well as the farm animals. And I look back now and I was amazed. I milked the cows and I chopped the heads off chickens for dinner and did all those things you do. And I felt bad for the chickens and for the cows. There was always an air of sadness in the dairy barn. These cows had these big tears going down their cheeks. Now I realize because they were all young mothers, just had their calf taken away from them, their babies taken away from them. But you're so busy into the farm work there that, well, that's just the way it is on the farm. And and so I grew up eating animals and eating the burgers and the fried chicken like everybody else until my mid 1930s, when a few events happened that just opened my eyes and brought about a drastic change in my food choices there. No, I was not immune from the societal amnesia, the societal blindness. That curtain comes down in our hearts, and we just don't think about what that piece of meat in the meat case really is, where it really came from. So that's why you and I, as adults, are here trying to awaken our brethren and sisterin about the realities of where our food comes from. Those are real animals with real lives, and we have no right to abuse them and take their lives because we like the way their flesh tastes in our mouth. We now look back and say, my heavens, I can't believe I actually did that. But that's how powerful our societal agreement is. But more and more young people are waking up and saying, nope, that's not, they can't work in my life. And we want to foster that understanding.
I hope so. I hope you're right about that. I hope you're right about that. Is that your impression that more and more young people are kind of getting that
The many
awakening?
more, yes, well, the internet certainly helps. And there's a generalized and not undeserved fear among the young people about their ecological futures, what's going to happen to this planet. And we need to make that connection that, that burger you kids love, that's what's driving your ecological doom. And hopefully, as the word gets around and a few mouse clicks that stop eating that stuff, that's what's killing us. It's going to be as unfashionable to eat meat as smoking cigarettes and wearing fur. Someone lights up. We look at it. Are you still doing that, man? Don't you know what that does? Oh, hopefully, when people order their burgers, their friends will say, "Are you still eating that? Don't you know what that does to your body and to the planet?" So I have hopes that young people in the internet are going to be a front wave of this revolution here. But the advertising is powerful, and the food folks make those burgers taste good in your mouth, and it's a powerful hold that they have on us. But we have no choice. The truth just has to come out, and that's why podcasts like this are a powerful way for me to practice preventive medicine, to get this word out. We don't need another study showing that plant-based diets lower high blood pressure. We know that. It's a matter of educating the public. It's turning this ocean liner to the plant-based course here is what we're about. And that's why podcasters like you are on the forefront of the societal change. Got a lot of work to do, but I still maintain hope here.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm certainly with you. And it's interesting because the public needs to be educated, but of course, as you talk about in your book, the doctors also need to be educated
Oh,
because they're not, or even worse, they're miseducated and they get a
oh,
lot of agenda-driven information. Yeah.
it's embarrassing as a physician to hear my colleagues promote carnivore diets and paleo diets and keto diets. And well, that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And the pendulum swings back and forth. A few years ago, the plant strong ideas were in ascendancy, but now that pendulum swung back, and now the carnivore meat folks are riding high. But Mother Nature doesn't care about your politics. She cares about what you're running through your arteries every 4 hours. She cares about what you're packing your intestine with every 3 times a day. And we are plant-eating hominids. We by anatomy and physiology, we have fingers on our hands, not claws. We've got small mouths with flat grinding molar teeth, and this our saliva has enzymes for digesting starches. If that's not a clue from the universe what we should be eating, I don't know what is. And meat-based diet is a violation of natural law. And I have no doubt, no matter what our Health and Human Services Secretary is promoting, that people who follow a meat-based diet within 36, 48 months, I'll put a $1,000 bill on the table that the medical journals are going to be erupting with articles. Carnivore diet and have increased risk of colon cancer. Paleo diet, increased risk of vascular dementia. Keto diet, increased risk of autoimmune disease. And my right eyebrow won't go up this much. Yep, that's the truth of it. And that pendulum's going to swing back, going to hit the 6 o'clock news. And suddenly those veggie burgers are going to start looking pretty good again.
Right, right.
They say you can't keep a hat pin in a cloth bag for very long. The point comes out. And that's what's going to happen. Yeah. In fact, someone just sent around an article, the head of cardiothoracic surgery at Harvard, who's been doing clogged artery bypasses for 20 years. He wrote this article. They should have taught me in medical school that a plant-based diet is the only way to prevent this disease. And I've been sending that around to my friends. And again, that's the message of our book. We want to we want to help the doctors make that transition before their patients suffer from their ignorance. And that really is, we're talking about nutritional ignorance. And it's not the doctor's fault that we weren't taught in medical schools, still not being taught. And so that's why I'm going around to the medical schools and reaching the medical students with this message that the majority of diseases they spend their careers treating they're basically caused by their patient's diet. These are reversible diseases. I wish someone had told me in medical school that type 2 diabetes is reversible. I wish someone had told me high blood pressure is reversible, and that a plant-based diet is the key to this reversal. That's the message that we're delivering to the students who are very open to this idea. And I want to reach them before pharmacosclerosis sets into their brain.
Yes, yes. The term, yeah, first heard here, that term. Yes. So tell me, first of all, if you wouldn't mind telling the story, what inspired you to go into medicine, and when did you yourself make that vegan leap?
Okay, well, as a kid on the farm, I was there with my older brother, my 4 cousins, and we were always jumping out of haylofts and playing around the farm equipment. And inevitably, we'd fall, we'd get cut, or scraped, whatever. And I was the one, I just wanted everybody to be okay. And so I would be the one to wash up their wounds and put a dressing on it. Even the animals, if I saw a sheep with a limp or whatever, had even hurt, I would try and put a splint on their hoof there. There was just inherent in me. I want everybody to be okay. And I see now as the world of science revealed the natural world to me. I understood the beauty of the natural world and how it follows nature's laws so perfectly. That becoming a physician was as natural as those two impulses combined. But as I said, I was a regular blood and guts working doc for the first 8 years of my medical career, and I thought I would be working in emergency rooms and operating rooms all my life. But I had a busy general practice that was not going well. Despite the firm admonitions to my patient, got to take your high blood pressure pill, Joe, and Mary, you got to raise your insulin dose. I don't know, your blood sugar is too high. No one was getting healthier. They were moving in the opposite direction. They were getting more obese and more sick. And I'm getting calls in the emergency room. This one's in with a heart attack, and Joe's in with a stroke. I felt like such a failure that I left general practice, my true love, and decided to become an anesthesiologist. And I was in my 3rd year of anesthesia training. And I was on the cardiovascular anesthesia service. And day after day, I'm putting people to sleep and watching surgeons open their chest and open their arteries in their heart and pull out this yellow, greasy gunk called atherosclerosis, which turns out to be the saturated fats and cholesterol from the animals they're eating. And there were also studies in the medical books saying that in the medical journals that this is a reversible disease, that a healthy, low-fat, plant-based diet can melt away these plaques. Well, my dad died of clogged arteries. I know I've got those genes. And I knew that if I didn't change to a plant-based diet, it was going to be me on that operating table with that striker saw going out my sternum. And I didn't want that. I saw those folks when they woke up. They're very uncomfortable. And
Sorry to interrupt, but how did you know that at that point?
I'm
Had you
sorry.
learned about plant-based nutrition? Were you aware that that was
Oh,
the key to
no, there were
preventing?
already studies in the medical journal. In 1977, Dr. Frey Ellis published a study about he had a patient with had such severe angina that he had to stop every 10 paces to let the chest pain go away. Went on a plant-based diet. 6 months later, he's climbing mountains in the Lake District in England. Dean Ornish was doing his work showing that these plaques could be melted away. There were already glimmers in the medical literature and that
Hmm.
I was aware of there. And and then, so I'm getting messages from my left brain that you ought to adopt a plant-based diet. And shortly after that, I'm out with for dinner one night with another anesthesia resident, and I'm pontificating about the books I've been reading about living a life of non-harm, a life of ahimsa. It's a
Ahimsa, yes.
healing concept. But I'm talking while I'm polishing off a porterhouse steak at the local Kagan Cleaver restaurant. And he looks at me with great compassion and says, "That's all very nice, Michael, but if you want to get rid of the violence in your life, you might want to start with that piece of meat on your plate, because in satisfying your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, which is really what this is about, because we don't really need the nutrition, you are paying for the death of the animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse." Well, as soon as he said that, all the old rationalizations flashed into my head. Well, the animal's dead already, and that's what they raised them for. But before I could get the words out of my lips, that little voice on my shoulder said, he's right. He's right. And when I went up to pay for the steak dinner, I felt complicit in a crime because I love those big, beautiful animals, those cows, and they're gentle and they're sweet. And here I am paying for their death in that horrible slaughterhouse scene. Well, between my left brain, my intellect was telling me from what I saw in the operating room and what my heart was telling me that night in the restaurant, that was the end of my meat eating. And dairy certainly followed shortly afterwards, after I realized that the dairy barn is a short stopping off place on the way to the slaughterhouse. These animals, they all wind up in hamburger buns. Well, that was the end of my meat eating. Well, my body loved it. Within 6 months, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my waist. My high blood pressure went to normal. My cholesterol went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day. And at that point, the penny dropped. The light went on. Now I understood why my patients in general practice were all getting fatter and sicker from what they are running through their arteries every 4 hours. It's the food, as Dr. McDougall made it very clear. And at that point, I realized I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist and spend my career literally putting people to sleep. Now, I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up, right? So I did, much to my parents' dismay. I dropped out, and it was 6 months to go in my residency. Do you know the money you are giving up? But yeah, it wasn't in truth. I'm a GP in my heart. So I went back to general practice and found people in my area who could give plant-based cooking lessons. And those amenable patients who I sent there and learned how to prepare plant-based food stream, they experienced the same great changes. They got leaner, their blood pressure came down, their insulin receptors opened up, their blood sugars normalized. And I realized a lot of what I had learned in medical school just ain't necessarily so. High blood pressure, they will take these pills the rest of their lives, lifetime medication. On the contrary, not only can you get these people off their blood pressure pills, you have to get them off as they lose weight and their arteries relax and their pressure comes down. You keep them on these powerful medications, they'll stand up and pass out on you from low blood pressure. Same thing with the folks with the diabetes. Now, once on insulin, always on insulin, we were told. Not only can you get them off their insulin, you have to get them off because, again, they lose weight, their insulin receptors open up, their insulin resistance goes away. And if you keep giving these folks insulin, they're going to have serious hypoglycemic reactions on you. And so suddenly medicine became fun again. I'm watching my patients get healthy right before my eyes. Medical school never prepared me for people getting healthy. I mean, literally, we learn how the best you can do is manage their high blood pressure, manage their diabetes. Well, no, they still get sick and die. You want to. Yeah, and I talk to the medical students and the residents, and I have a slide in my presentation saying, knowing how reversible these diseases are with a plant-based diet, you want to heal these patients, or you just want to manage their chronic disease. If you're just going to manage their disease, you'll leave medicine. They're all going to get fatter and sicker, and they're all going to get strokes and heart attacks. You want to heal these patients, then get real, doctor, about why they're sitting in front of you in these bodies, overweight, hypertensive, atherosclerotic, diabetic, and inflamed from what they are running through their arteries every 4 hours. It's the food that's so toxic. And the plant-based, making that transition, it's the major obstacle we are all working to overcome. But really, to choose the bean chili instead of the beef chili, it's not that great a sacrifice to have pasta primavera with vegetables and mushrooms instead of meatballs. There's a wonderful cuisine waiting for us that's all plant-based. And again, podcasters like you make our society more open to a different understanding of their food and the key role it plays in not only creating disease, but also reversing disease. What an exciting concept that is. So at this point, you can't unring the bell in my head and in the medical students' heads. The German philosopher Goethe said, "What you know about, you see. Once you know about something, you start seeing it everywhere." And in my slide presentation to the med students and the residents, what I wish I learned in medical school about nutrition, I show them the science. Here's why a plant-based diet will reverse high blood pressure. Here's how a plant-based diet reverses type 2 diabetes. And once they see the science, they got it. Then outpatient clinic looks very different the next day when they see these patients. They understand it's from what they've been eating. And so I tell them, find a plant-based dietitian, even in your state. She doesn't even have to be in the same city. This works so beautifully by telemedicine. And as I'm lecturing the medical students, I say, when you get out in practice, don't rock the boat in med school right now, but when you get out in practice, find a plant-strong dietitian. And when you see your new patients, practice good medicine, take a medical history, do a physical exam, order your labs, and review the scans, get a diagnosis, get them on medications if you need to. But before you dismiss the patient, give them the contact information for your plant-based dietitian colleague and say, I want you to contact Ms. Smith or Mr. Jones and do a telemedicine consultation with them. They will talk to you about what to eat. They'll give you handouts. They'll show you videos. You eat like they're telling you, and you come back and see me in a month. Let's see if you're not leaner and healthier. Then we'll talk about getting you off some of these medications you're on. And there's a new model for medical practice. Hold the dietitian onto your treatment, your primary care treatment team. We've been holding her at arm's length as an afterthought, but the dietitian is key. And the food coach that she may recommend to actually help the patient get this going in their lives for the first month or two. You change these people's lives. You'll save their lives with these kinds of recommendations. So again, you want to heal these patients. That's how medicine should be practiced in the 21st century. And that's what our book, Moving Medicine Forward, is explaining to the patients and the doctors. This is a great gift to give your doctor. I've got a chapter a day in the disease reversal clinic. Wouldn't it be nice to walk into your local hospital, an orthopedic clinic, a GI clinic, disease reversal clinic, on one of the doors there. And in the book, I say, the truth is every doctor's office should be a disease reversal clinic these days, knowing what we now know. And we go through to show the doctor how they can get these concepts into their daily medical practice, and they can become the happiest doctor they know. Those patients get healthy too.
I mean, this all sounds brilliant to me, and it all makes so much sense, of course. I'm curious how long it took you to develop that model, that sort of template for introducing this information and kind of easing it in at a pace where they could absorb it and make some changes.
Right. Again, I've been practicing medicine for 50, count them 50 years, more than that now. And this is slowly taking shape, but the truth comes out in such a powerful way. It guides you there. There's no um, the body's never not looking. You can't tell your body, look over here and have a cheeseburger there. What was that? Because I show here's what your blood looks like after you eat a cheeseburger and then bacon and eggs breakfast. It runs thick with fat and a platoon of destructive molecules, free radicals, and advanced glycation end products, and oxidized cholesterol, and high fructose corn syrup. And all this stuff flows through every tissue, every cell in your body after every fast food meal. And this is what's driving the inflammation and the clogged arteries and the autoimmune diseases. And the science is so persuasive at this point that it's a matter of communicating it to the doctors and the patients. And my noble profession has been a real bottleneck as far as helping this society-wide transition happen. What if every doctor at every visit for sprained ankles and runny noses, that before you dismiss the patient, oh, by the way, how's your diet going these days? Are you getting more plant-based foods in? Or what if every doctor was that supportive of this transition? It would change the course of Western medicine. It would change our society, and that's what I'm trying to do, reaching the medical profession and especially in the student stage. It's the acupuncture point where if we
Mm.
can open up that resistance, then this plant-based transition will proceed apace pretty quickly. So it's been, you talk about the art of medicine. There's an art with the individual patient sitting in front of you with his arms full. I don't want to give up my steak. There's an art to reaching this person. But again, there's been an art in reaching my profession. You do it respectfully. There's a lot of resistance because we're trained in medical school. Get a diagnosis, get a right medicine, refer them to the surgeon. You've done your job. And no one's getting to the root of the problem. And so we need to get that into the basic teaching during medical school. And that's a major thrust here. I
Mm.
shouldn't have to be doing this. The power of a plant-based diet to avert disease should be part of every year of the medical school experience. And the first 2 years are basic sciences, anatomy, physiology. Well, the effect of food should be woven into each one of these basic science. Talk about the anatomy of the digestive system, talk about the physiology of how the enzymes work in the GI tract to turn food into energy, the biochemistry, talk about the amazing mitochondria and how they use the glucose in our diet to produce movement. But even pathology, how disease developed, they're all basically food-related diseases these days, the clogged arteries and high blood pressure, etc. So it should be taught in pathology class. Pharmacology, obese patients respond to medications different than
Mm.
underweight patients. We need to talk about the food there. And then when they move into the second 2 years, the clinical rotations, and obstetrics, delivering babies, these women are eating the fast food diet, they put on too much weight, they develop type 2 gestational diabetes, their babies get too big, so they need cesarean sections. That's a food related. You should be talking about the diet and pregnancy on that service. Then you move on to pediatrics. Well, the kids are getting obese, they're getting type 2 diabetes. The pediatrician looked at me one day and said, Doc, atherosclerosis, the biggest killer in America today, it's a pediatric disease. From the
Mm.
burgers and the pizzas these kids are eating it already at age 9 and 10. These kids killed in car accidents, you open their aortas, already they've got the atherosclerotic streaks starting in their artery walls there. So certainly pediatricians should have a discussion every week on their service about diet for these kids. Then you move on to internal medicine. Oh, good heavens, all the high blood pressure and the diabetes, it's all from what they're eating. So you move on to surgery, where they're up in the operating room taking out gallbladders and doing amputations from what the patient is eating. So there should be nutrition rounds on every one of these services once a week, 3 times a week or whatever. It should be woven into the entire medical school curriculum. And that's what we're advocating in our book, Moving Medicine Forward. That would move medicine forward.
Right.
So we're putting that
Yeah. It's fascinating. I mean, obviously everything you say makes so much sense. And yet obviously there are also a lot of obstacles and resistance. One of the other guests I've had on the show is Dr. T. Colin Campbell, who after he came out with the China study, the most comprehensive nutritional study to date, he really thought the practice of medicine would change after that. A decade later, he wrote another book called Whole to kind of discuss some of the reasons that nothing had changed. What are the biggest factors to you in terms of what keeps medicine from moving forward in this way?
very important question, of course. So there's a huge intellectual inertia to keep things the way they are for many reasons, of course. And the whole system of medical education, medical practice has become sclerotic, calcified with major forces keeping things as they are. What are these forces? Well, there's the medical schools themselves. That curricula has been pretty much locked into place. As I mentioned there's no room for nutrition. And in fact, I've had a couple of cynical professors say, well, that's all very nice, doctor, but the coursework we put these students through is so compact. Every hour of lecture time is taken up. What course do you want us to drop so we can get in your nutrition course? You want us to not teach pathology? You want us to not teach microbiology? And that's a cynical way of looking at it. As I mentioned, they have to drop out any course, weave nutrition into all those teachings there. But just the structure of medical education has been in place for decades and decades. And what keeps it in place? Well, not only is the academic folks, they don't know anything about nutrition, so they don't want to let it in. The NIH syndrome, not invented here. We didn't come up with it. It's got no place in our teaching. But then the money can't say it doesn't have a huge influence. Running a medical school these days is a multi-million-dollar operation. Where do you want to get this money? Well, the pharmaceutical companies are very happy to give multi-million-dollar grants to the medical schools, but they certainly have some input about what gets taught in the curricula, as far as, especially in the pharmacology classes and pathology, clinical rotations. And every student is given the stethoscopes with Pfizer's name on it and all sorts of free goodies to entrain you into that pharmacologic model. And the meat industry, the agricultural folks, they put huge amounts of money into medical school education, and they're going to have their say for them to keep that food pyramid with them. Now it's been inverted, so the meat and dairy is right up at the top. Or probably, they're happy to keep that way. Those grants keep on flowing that way. And there's just like in politics, money has invaded and produced such perverse outcomes. Well, it's happened in medical education as well. And so there's a lot of inertia to overcome. And medical practice itself, the people make a lot of money. That the whole system, including the insurance companies, they make money from procedures, from doing things to people, from putting in stents, from bypassing arteries. You got to do something to patients. They don't pay you for just talking about eating more broccoli. They don't pay you for that. And so the practicing doctors and the young doctors are reluctant to even open that door in their minds because they don't get paid for it. They don't have time to do it. And again, you don't have to, doctor. There are dietitians who will do this for you, but they get a pass on nutrition. It's never really mentioned in medical school. And there's cultural reasons. They say, well, I've got a Hispanic patient and they eat meat and cheese. I can't tell the Hispanic patient what they should be eating. Or I've got South Indian patients. Oh, I can't tell them what they should be eating. Yes, doctor, you can. They get the same heart attacks and strokes and diabetes, in fact, more so in some ethnic groups. And you owe them. It's not fair to withhold information that could reverse their diseases. And so that's another issue. And again, you can make a vegetable curry instead of a lamb curry. You can certainly get these folks eating healthier with a little bit of care and concern and an understanding on the doctor's part about the wonderful changes that happen in the body when you go from an animal-based full of food stream full of sugars and fats and dairy and animal protein. You change that to a plant-based food stream. Everything changes in the body. The blood becomes less viscous, more free-flowing. The inflammatory balance tissues, the inflammatory molecules in the tissues goes down when you stop eating animal products. And the anti-inflammatory products come up with as the omega-3 fats permeate the tissues. You change the microbiome in the gut when you pull out the meat and dairy, and now put in these lovely resistant starches and plant fibers. The microbes become more benevolent, less inflammatory. They put out feel-good chemicals like norepinephrine and dopamine and serotonin, and gets into your bloodstream from your microbiome. The asthmatic folks wheeze less, the mucus in their lungs is less viscous. It's an anti-inflammatory diet. The joints stop hurting. So the eczema skin clears up. Everything changes in the body as we obey natural law when we come back to that plant-based diet that we were designed to eat. And when the medical students and the residents see the slide, oh, right, that's what happens. Then again, you can't unring the bell. We're clanging it away there. So, we each do what we can do. You've got your own coal face there. You're working to educate your audience. I'm working on the medical audience here. We're both doing what we can do, but we're chipping away, and eventually that wall of resistance will crumble. And you look at so many other things. We used to harpoon whales in the head, and in Massachusetts in the 1850s. We look back and I can't believe we used to do that. We used to buy and sell black people. Oh my God, I can't believe we used to do that. Well, hopefully we're raising billions of animals to cut their throats and eat their flesh. Hopefully that will acquire that same label. I can't believe we used to do that. And hopefully the whole sad meat chapter will fade back into the rearview mirror of history there. So that's what you and I are working to help.
Right, right. Yeah, that's the vision. That's the vision. Whether we personally are here to see it, it's I kind of the analogy that I often think of is there's a species of butterflies who migrate every year from Mexico up north, and none of the individual butterflies who start the journey make it to the destination, but the butterflies as a whole. So I think of the vegan
Uh,
movement in that respect.
yeah.
We're the butterflies. So we ourselves may not see that final happy outcome, but we're part of a bigger
Learning how.
movement. So, but I'm curious. It sounds like you're targeting the medical schools to get these doctors before they're so entrenched and so indoctrinated and so
Mhm.
entangled in the medical model and big pharma. Because it seems to me, which to me makes a lot of sense, because how many doctors are going to be educating their patients about plant-based nutrition when they're not vegan themselves? And how much credibility would they even have if they're not vegan themselves?
And
So,
for that reason, I just lost your. For that reason, I seldom use the V word these days because that's it gets the doctors a bit defensive. Plant strong, plant predominant, fine, and it's true. I can't intellectually say there's studies showing that if you're on a vegan diet and you have a small amount of meat once a week, lightning is going to come down from the sky and strike you dead, and So for that reason, if they have a plant predominant diet where it's a plant strong food stream, but if they want to put in some flesh sparingly, okay, I'm not going to argue and make a stand. I got to be vegan tomorrow. But of course, we encourage them to, eat the stuff less and less, and eventually let it fade out of your diet there. It's a reasonable thing to do. And so there's it seems that's the only message to deliver at this point.
Hmm.
So however they
Yeah.
hear it packaged, fine with me, but just get that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what has the response been? Would you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
human nature is so amazing. You never know who hears. You never know who's ready. How many times I've had a couple in the audience in my office. The wife has found a breast lump or whatever, and she's very interested in changing her diet. And the husband's sitting there, arms folded, shaking his head. I'm not, rah, 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 rah. And you don't see the husband again. But 6 months goes by. The woman comes in for her recheck, brings her husband. He's 20 pounds lighter. Doc, we're gonna no, I'm not using that insulin anymore. You never know who hears
You
what.
never know.
And this
Yeah.
with my medical colleagues. I've got family physician colleagues who've, I tell them if you've not seen a film called Forks Over Knives, please see that film. You will see not only patients transforming their diet and having their bodies transformed, you'll see doctors working with this on an active basis. Are role models for you so you don't feel so alone. And so that often helps the doctors make that first step. And if they can, especially if they can change it in their own lives, then they get enthusiastic about it. They lose the weight, their lipids get better. And so I've got a number of them that in their family practice office after hours at 6 in the evening, they set up card tables in their waiting room area. They're plug in a blender and a hot plate and bring their patients in and show them how to make salad dressings and cook oatmeal and boil rice and steam vegetables. And so it happens on an individual basis, but it starts spreading through the medical staffs, and because their statistics are showing up that their patients get readmitted to the hospital a lot less frequently,
Mm.
and there's no stopping this. The truth will permeate through every aspect of the community medical practices and the university ones. And the public's demanding it, the students are demanding it, and now, bless his heart, Mr. Kennedy, RFK Jr., has gotten commitments from 53 of the nation's medical schools. That's a third of the 165 medical schools to assure that they will offer at least 40 hours of nutrition education through their 4 years of medical school. Now that's not a lot, it's only 10 hours a year, but even so, well,
Hmm.
it's a lot better than the zero that most of them
Right.
are now offering. Now the question, of course, is in those 40 hours, what exactly is going to be taught? And
Right.
heavy is going the carnivore philosophy going to permeate these teachings? So, to make sure that the plant strong message gets heard, our nonprofit organization, Moving Medicine Forward, is we have the list of those 53 medical schools, and we are going to be looking over their shoulder. And we're going to want to see the
Mm.
courses that they are devising and what they're going to be offering their students. And we want to make sure that the plant strong message and the science behind it gets fairly represented. I know I can't expect them to be all 100% vegan overnight, but we want their plant strong message and all the solid research that substantiates it to be fairly represented in their curricula. So this is a major step forward if it unfolds properly. And they say when the dog plays the violin, don't criticize the quality of the playing. The fact that it's playing it all is wonderful. And the fact that they've taken this step, I'm very grateful for it. I don't want to be too cynical here, but we just want to make sure the strong voices are heard properly.
Right. I mean, that does sound like a massive, like a fundamental sea change, that's enormous.
Indeed.
I too, yeah, obviously I share your concerns about the content of those courses and also the, you know, influences that will be put to work in dictating that content. Yeah. How do you see just the interplay of big pharma and animal ag in this whole mix?
Right, yeah. It's going to have its influence, no doubt. But show me the money. Show me. I invite the meat-based folks. Show me the studies that a carnivore diet's going to melt away atherosclerotic plaques. There are no such studies. Plant-based diet, plenty of those studies. Uh, with the diabetes, etc., show me the studies that a high-fat diet is going to reverse insulin resistance. There is not going to be a study because it's the high-fat diet that causes insulin resistance, and they're promulgating a high-meat, high-saturated fat diet. So I feel confident that when we all have to put the cards on the table there, they're going to have to say, yeah, we have to represent this as scientifically valid. And so bring it on. We're up for this contest here. We feel confident the truth will out.
Right, right. I'm confident too. However, like I live here in Nashville, Tennessee, and one of the organizations you hear a lot about when it comes to, nutrition think tanks, is a place called the Weston Price Foundation, which I'm sure you're,
Nashville, I
yeah,
didn't know they were there.
yeah.
They've
So,
they've done so much harm in their teachings and on so many levels. And yes, they well, I think Upton Sinclair said, it's difficult to convince a man of a scientific viewpoint when his paycheck depends upon him not seeing it. And similarly, these folks are so invested in the animal industry products there that they grab onto any thing that they can use to keep that philosophy going. And they've got the steak tastes good in your mouth if you still like it. There comes a point, after you've been vegan for a while, you don't even want to think about it. You put it in your mouth. But oh, those burgers taste good and the steak tastes good. And now, thanks to Mr. Kennedy, you can eat all the meat you want. You can eat all the dairy you want. In fact, it's good for you. Saturated fat's good for you. And so we're saying that pendulum swing. But I tell the people, look, you don't have to confront that directly. There's 2 points of power in your weekly life where you can make a difference, certainly in your own life and in the larger picture. And that first point is when you're pushing that cart down the supermarket aisle, deciding what goes in that basket that's going to come home with you. And if we stop buying the meat and the dairy, the economics are going to change, and you're going to see more and more plant-strong products showing up, even from the chicken folks. They're going to be very interested in the plant-based versions of that. And the second place is when you're in the restaurant with that menu in front of you. I say every time you look at the wait person, say, I'll have the beef, I'll have the veal, I'll have the chicken. Every time you say those words, not only do your arteries and body suffer, but your children, your grandchildren's world gets a little hotter and a little drier and a little deader, and more trees are cut down, and more rivers are sucked dry, and more soil blows away to keep those food choices going. So those 2 points, if you choose the plant-based foods while you're shopping and you order the plant-based entrees in the restaurant, that's how society starts to change, and you'll certainly benefit. But all of us will. Why did Mr. Kennedy get these 53 medical schools to open their minds to nutrition? Because the public's demanding it, because the common sense is saying it's becoming blatantly obvious. We are a fat, sick nation from what we're eating, and there's no hiding it anymore. And people, when you're a little kid, you don't want to give up your teddy bear, and we grow up with these. Well, I don't want to give up my burger. But there comes a point you gotta leave the teddy bear and the burger behind, especially if you got a burger that tastes just as good or better. And
right.
So for that
Right.
reason, I'm not opposed to the plant-based burgers. They have a useful role to play in this transition process. That if
Sure.
Joe meat and potatoes guy can bite into a juicy plant burger and say, "Oh, well, that's plant-based. I could eat that." Man, you've changed
Yeah.
his life. You've opened his head to a pleasant eating experience on a plant-based item there. So the wheels are slowly starting to
Yeah.
turn in the
Yeah.
engine room there. We just kind of got to keep them going, keep lubricating it,
Yeah.
keep
It's so interesting. Yeah. Well, first of all, too, all plant-based burgers are not created equal. So
no,
some are much more
right,
health promoting than others,
no doubt.
or less so. But yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, in this whole journey, I mean, you've come at it from all angles, growing up working on the farm, so seeing the animal piece just very, very clearly, like on a closer, more intimate level than most of us ever do. And then also having that medical background, so you have that completely different lens too. I mean, for me, I know when I went vegan, it wasn't until I'd always been interested in health and nutrition, but I considered that a separate interest from, my concern over what was happening to animals, the animals in our food system, especially. And then for me, it was very powerful after I went vegan when I learned, oh, not only is this the most loving thing I can do for the non-human animals, but it's also the most loving thing I can do for my own body and for starving children in Africa and for the environment and the planet. And so for me, it was a very profound experience. I refer to it sometimes as a spiritual awakening, no matter what angle we approach it from. Love, the most loving thing, love is the answer. So I found that just really, really heartening and just really reassuring that this is the path. And at the same time, again, so many forces are working against us. There's big pharma, animal ag, big business, just the whole power structure where people in power don't really want the regular people to be in power and to seize hold of that massive power they have in terms of what they put into their bodies. And then just our own human nature too. For instance, my sister is a nurse. She says all her nurse colleagues, almost all of them, are taking the weight loss drug. So, we have, I mean, who doesn't want a shortcut? Who doesn't want a quick fix? I would want a shortcut if they actually worked and didn't have downsides. I'm not opposed to a shortcut on principle. It's just that they don't tend to work. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Any thoughts on that whole on that whole
sure.
quandary?
I encounter lots of patients on these GLP-1 drugs now, and they work, and patients get that initial weight loss, and it's very gratifying. But of course, the specter that hangs over them and their doctors, if you stop taking this drug, then the weight's going to come right back up, and so you've got to keep taking this drug forever. Um, that's right, doctor. If they keep eating cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas, yes, that weight's going to come right back. But I tell them this is a golden opportunity while you're on these drugs, which you can taper off. Use these months or years to learn how to eat a whole food plant-based diet, which is naturally low in calories. The calorie density is so low, it's mostly fiber and water. That's what vegetables are made of. And as you're nice and lean, as am I, you can't hold weight on a whole food plant-based vegan diet. And say use this time, the 6 months, 18 months, 2 year, however long you're on these drugs, use it to learn how to eat a plant-based diet. So when you do taper off these drugs, the weight not only doesn't come back, in fact, the weight loss will continue if you need it to, until you finally, your body arrives at its ideal body weight there. So just because someone's on these drugs does not mean they're hopeless, and they're certainly not trapped. It still comes down to eating the diet we're designed to run on, but use that time when you're on the drug to make the transition actually fairly painless, actually, and so they can be used to benefit. But again, it's embarrassing that my colleagues in medicine don't know this. Well, you got to stay on this drug forever and $1,000 a month. And my insurance company stopped paying for it. Well, I can't help that. So you got to. There's such a cynical trap that the patients find themselves in. But again, eat plants and get healthy. I should have a t-shirt. Eat plants, get on with it already, you know.
Yeah, well, I love that you referred to this way of eating as the diet we're designed to eat, because that kind of takes away this misconception that, oh, this vegan thing, this whole food plant-based way approach is new or something for only privileged white women to
Right.
to
Yeah.
try.
Yeah.
No, it's like you say, it's what our bodies are designed to run on.
Oh, absolutely. And when there's this caveman myth, like every Neanderthal had a mastodon in the freezer and spends all day eating mammoth meat. I'm a caveman, I eat meat. But that's simply a fantasy. First of all, as far as the meat, most hunts back then were unsuccessful. Most times the guys came back empty-handed. If they did drag a carcass into a camp, it rotted within days. There was no refrigeration. It became toxic. These are very lean animals, very little fat. They're promoting a high-fat diet. These are very lean animals anyway. We couldn't survive on that. The truth is that. When when they examined the fecal dropping, the fossilized feces, the coproliths from the Paleolithic folks, they're huge. These folks were eating huge amounts of fiber in their daily diet. Where was it coming from? It came from the fact that most of the calories that were brought into the Paleolithic camps that let us survive in those dark eons long ago, most of these calories were gathered by the women who spent all day digging up starchy roots and tubers and gathering edible grasses and berries we were starchivores now. Again, we got these starch digesting enzymes in our saliva. It's clearly what we should be eating. And people say, well, the advent of fire let us roast meat, and so we can eat more of it. Yeah, but the advent of fire also let us boil water. And you can take those tough, starchy roots and put them in boiling water. Ooh, suddenly you can eat a whole lot more calories and protein. And so we were starchivores back then. We are starchivores now. And so they're using this fantasy of what the caveman ate to justify this totally unnatural diet of no other primate eats flesh 3 times a day. It's so unnatural, and now it's taken us over the cliff of degenerative disease. So now we got to pull ourselves off of that, and the truth is the truth. And again, you're helping to get that message out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's amazing to me that we're consuming more animal-based protein than ever in human history. So we're just this living experiment that, like you said, is going off the cliff.
A
It's yeah,
thousand Americans a day grab their chest and falls over the heart attack and dies. Every 30 seconds, an American dropping dead from a heart attack. What more red lights do you need to
right,
flashing that this is the wrong
right.
fuel? Absolutely.
Right, right. Well, one more question that's a little bit off topic, but in addition to being a writer and podcaster, I'm also a clinical mental health counselor. And I'm just wondering if you touch on mental health at all in your book.
We do in that. As I mentioned, the microbes in our gut respond to the food we're putting down through our intestine tract. And if you are eating meat and dairy products, you are fostering the growth of some really unfriendly organisms from the Firmicutes phylum. And their byproducts, their waste products, injure the gut wall. They set off inflammation. They set off autoimmune disease. Well, if you pull the meat and dairy out, now all the food material coming through the intestines are plant fibers, including the resistant starches from the legumes, from the beans and peas, etc. Well, that fosters a whole different set of microbes from the Bacteroides phylum. And as I mentioned earlier, these organisms not only their byproducts are anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer, they heal the gut wall and reduce the chances of colon cancers. but they can't help it. Their byproducts are feel-good chemicals. They put out oxytocin, the cuddle chemical. They put out norepinephrine, the strength chemical. They put out dopamine and serotonin for serenity. And I've had many patients say, doc, I went plant-based. I'm just feeling generally better, a little more positive. And again, I tell them that's not a placebo effect. That's a gift from your refurbished microbiome there. So the food we eat permeates every aspect of our being, including the chemicals that go from the gut back up into the brain through the vagus nerve, through our venous system. So everything's connected. We are holistic beings. Our awareness is throughout our body here. And so yes, in that way, it can directly influence mental well-being and emotional well-being. But as you and me know, as long-term vegans, when we put our heads down on the pillow and whatever else we got going in our heads about the rent and the car repairs, we know neither of us have willingly contributed to the death and suffering of these magnificent, sweet, innocent animals, and that alone helps one's mental equilibrium and as we navigate this crazy world we're all trying to do our best in.
Yes, yes, completely agreed. Yeah. Well, what's the best place for people to get your book,
Okay.
Moving Medicine Forward? And to whom would you most recommend your book? Is it meant more for doctors? Is it meant more for lay people?
Good question. Good question. If people want to follow what we are doing, and we are a nonprofit organization totally dependent upon donations of our supporters, please go to our website, movingmedforward.org, movingmedforward.org. I'm sure that you will see that in the show notes here. And on that website, you can see what we're doing. You'll see all the medical schools that we've been talking to, the ones that are on our schedule for the rest of this year. And also, if you want to see the film, you want to see the presentation I give to the medical residents and medical students called What I Wish I Learned in Medical School About Nutrition, that's on that website too. You can watch what I'm telling the medical students and you'll learn a ton of the science behind it. So go to our website. And if you go to Amazon, you will find that Moving Med Forward, or my book here, is now available for pre-sales. It hits the bookstores April 7th. So it's certainly available. Go to movingmedforward.org. You'll see it there. And who's it meant for? I wrote the book intentionally, yes, for doctors and medical students, but certainly the lay public will understand. There's nothing that complex in it. And once you read this, then your next doctor's appointment, you'll know what questions to ask your doctor, what your doctor should be asking you. You can guide your doctor into nutrition-based discussions because you'll understand more about it. People are saying, I can't find a plant-based doctor. Make your own doctor a plant-based doctor by educating them. So this would be a great gift for your physician, as well as friends in your circle who need to know more about these very important subjects.
Yeah, yeah, which shouldn't be patient's job, but
Right.
unfortunately,
Welcome to
unfortunately.
21st century. This is the
Right,
that we found
right,
ourselves because of us to extricate ourselves.
right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful information. We'll certainly include all those details in the show notes. And Dr. Michael Klaper, the final question, which I like to ask all my guests, is there a particular word that for you sums up what being vegan is all about?
Oh, it's all about love. There's no question. Love for yourself, love for the animals, love for the earth, love for the future, love for this magnificent body we've been given. Vitamin L is the most powerful vitamin of all, and find ways to get it into everything you do, and everything will get better from there for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I like that, and I completely agree.
Thank you so much.
Um,
What a great
so
opportunity this has been. You're doing great work, and you're a good interviewer. And so
Well,
thank you for
thank you.
that.
Thank you. And we close, before we wrap up, we close every episode of the Vegan Posse by taking 30 seconds of silence for all the suffering animals, human and non-human, who desire, as we all do, safety, happiness, and the freedom to live out their lives without interference. So, Dr. Michael Klaper, I invite you to join me in 30 seconds of silence for the animals, and we'll conclude with the sound of the bell. Thank you, Dr. Michael Klaper, and thank you, Posse. See you next time. Until then, stay strong and stay true.